Good evening, and welcome to another episode of the Too Many Voices podcast. I'm your host, John J. Laughlin, and it is Wednesday, May the 17th, 2023. I'd like to welcome everyone back and hope that everyone is happy, healthy, and wealthy and moving forward in life. So a huge topic of this podcast will be dealing with addiction issues, alcoholism, and drug addiction. I am a recovering alcoholic, and I spent 25 years fighting that demon, finally slayed that demon, and navigated my way out of that pit of hell with the help of some very good people and a lot of rehabs. But I made it. So if I can do it, you can do it. So hang in there. Another big topic of this podcast will be psychedelics, psychedelic medicines, psychedelic therapy, plant medicines. And for me personally, psychedelics have been absolutely instrumental in my own healing, just in general, just dealing with stuff, but especially where alcoholism and drug addiction was concerned. So in 2011, I ventured down to Mexico to partake in an Ibogaine treatment. I was in pretty rough shape then. I mean, I was relapsing into everything: alcohol, cocaine, pills, painkillers, and other opioids. But yeah, I was in bad shape. And when I was on the phone with the owner of the clinic, he asked me if I had any experience with psychedelics, and I was like, well, yeah, taken quite a few here lately, actually, to fight the alcoholism. And he was like, okay, I'll tell the doctors to flood dose you. And I was like, okay, great. Little did I know, this treatment was going to turn into a doorway to part of my true purpose here on this planet, which is helping other people not suffer needlessly from alcohol and drug addiction. What I'm saying is, after my treatment, they gave me a job working at the clinic because of my martial arts background, and I'm pretty well versed in yoga, meditation, and breath work. And so they thought that I had a lot to bring to the table. And you can't walk on Ibogaine like you're in bed the whole time this is going on. That can get pretty intense for people, and it takes a couple of days for your muscles to everything to get working properly again. And so they thought doing yoga and some simple movements and would really help the patients. So this was very rewarding work for me. And just talking to the patients, and it gave me a chance, like hands-on, to see the true efficacy of psychedelic medicines and just how they just tremendously help people working through issues like alcoholism and drug addiction. So I'm not going to go into, too many specific details about what I saw on Ibogaine, because a lot of that's for me. And I don't want to put my imagery in your head, and you know what I'm saying? Because your subconscious records everything. If you go in there and take the Ibogaine, and then you see the same things that I told you about, and that has happened in the past with people. So if you're interested in doing this treatment, I want you to have your own experience. But I can tell you this, the visuals for me were just as intense as ayahuasca, and very high doses. Again, they gave me a very high dose. They flood dosed me, which means, over 1,000 milligrams. And so they gave me 1,700 milligrams of Ibogaine hydrochloride, which is kind of unheard of. So yeah, it was like straight up interdimensional traveling. Now again, going back to where the Bwiti cult says it's the bridge to the ancestors. So I did speak with dead relatives and some other relatives that I didn't know, but yeah, I did experience that. It was, like I said, I'm still putting the pieces together from it. It was intense, but very beautiful, and some of it was pretty scary. Now, Ibogaine has what's called neurogenic effects. Neurogenic effects means it's like a waking dream state. So at low doses, let's say 400 milligrams, and this was, it happened to me right when the Ibogaine began to take hold of me, maybe, 2 or 3 hours in. So you're awake on this, but you close your eyes, and it's like you go into a dream state, and you see aspects, different parts of your life replaying, like the traumas that are held in your subconscious. And so you close your eyes and you see, okay, there I am at 15, and this happened. here I am again at, 23, and this trauma happened, whatever it is. And it brings these things up so you can face them and deal with them, which, all psychedelics do, really. But at very high doses, yeah, it's, I remember seeing mermaids swimming in the ceiling in circles. Yeah, it was like that, And this went on, I don't know, the initial intense effects for me lasted about 2 days, and the residual effects lasted about a week. But it's like a waking dream state. And so you wake up from one vision, and, everything's going on in your bedroom, like what I just described with the mermaids, but then you shut your eyes again, and a whole new chapter begins. So it's like you're watching your life, but it's playing like a movie. I mean, it's about the best as I can describe it. So yeah, it was a pretty amazing experience. And again, the residual effects lasted for over a week. And like during the daytime, you couldn't see it, but at nighttime, about the third day after my initial treatment, but at nighttime, everything would just trail, like really trail. That was back when Android phones, I think, just kind of first came out. I remember taking my phone out of my pocket and getting to the screen where it was just all the apps, the different colored apps. And I remember taking my phone and just swirling my phone in front of my face, and it was like a tornado of colors, and it didn't stop swirling, So that goes on. But as far as like killing all the withdrawals and everything like that I was going through, absolutely. And Ibogaine, what Ibogaine does to your neuroreceptors in your brain, so any substance you use, whether it's tobacco, nicotine, opiates, cannabis, coffee even, alcohol, it leaves this gunk, like residue on the end of your receptors in your brain. And so Ibogaine, in layman's terms, scrubs your brain clean. It's cleaning your neuroreceptors. And, it's like hitting the reboot button, like the reboot on your computer. That's pretty much like what it is. And so, no, I didn't have any withdrawals. For me, I felt great. The next few days after my treatment, I was on cloud 9. Now, one friend of mine, we became friends. He was at the clinic when I was down there doing his treatment, so we did our treatments together. He was coming off of methadone. So Ibogaine can get you off of methadone. In fact, I think one of my TikTok followers, she asked me if that was possible, and I was like, absolutely. Now, it's not easy. Getting people off of methadone is very difficult. Methadone is a very insidious drug. Why they use it to treat opiate addiction, I don't know. In my opinion, it's just as bad as heroin or morphine, but it gets in your bones. And so the doctors had to flood dose my buddy 2 times. And so he was out there, for a couple of weeks. Maybe not that long, but it was a few days. It was a good 6-7 days, he was just getting it. And but it got him off of methadone. I mean, he was in rough shape for a few days. He felt like shit, but it was out of his system. So, yes, that can be done. And like any, addiction therapy, you have to want it to work. Okay, that's with anything. Now, Ibogaine, over the years, kind of developed this reputation as being a silver bullet for addiction. It is not, okay? You have to want it to work. And that's another big aspect of psychedelic use in general. If you're using it correctly, if you're using psychedelic medicines correctly for ceremonial purposes or, therapy, you set the intention. What are you trying to gain? What are your intentions? What do you want out of it? Because we did have one girl that came to our clinic. She was forced to go there by her parents, so she really wasn't ready. And she claimed that she still had cravings for heroin after her treatment was done. And so, yeah, she wasn't ready, but everyone else that came to the clinic, was good results. Everybody, was good to go after their treatment. I remember, this was about the second or third month I was working there. We had a woman that showed up from New York State. Well, she had been in Sudan for 2 years doing mission work and went through a horrible divorce, came to our clinic, did an Ibogaine treatment, and afterwards, I remember day 3, she was in her room for 3 days. She finally came out on day 3, crying and said that she could go home again, back to New York. And so that really, touched me and stuck with me. Just again as to the efficacy of these medicines and how, she wasn't there for drug addiction. She was just there working out personal life issues. And so it's, Ibogaine is definitely one of those things. It's like a key that can unlock certain aspects of your subconscious and really help you put the pieces together about your life and help you to rebuild your life. So yeah, it was an amazing experience for me. I would highly recommend Ibogaine to anyone suffering from opiates. Definitely over going to a methadone clinic. And in terms of drug rehabilitation clinics, average costs in the States for drug rehab is $20,000. Ibogaine treatments run anywhere from $6,000 to it could be up as high as $10,000, depending on where you go, where the clinic is. Unfortunately, the doctor that was in charge of my clinic, they got shut down by the cartel, and he moved his operation to the Bahamas. So he's in Nassau now. But it's a beautiful clinic right on the beach. That's how the clinic was in Mexico that I was at. It's usually a very nice house on the beach. You have a personal chef that cooks all your meals. All the food was organic. And it was a great place. And the doctors that ran the program were top notch and no issues at all. So I highly recommend it. And you can do that for, half the cost or a little less compared to a conventional rehab here in the States. Another important caveat that I should add is that you need to have a very good aftercare program set up for yourself after doing Ibogaine or any psychedelic treatment, really. If you're still, because it's going to continue to bring a lot of stuff up. Ibogaine stays in your system; it stays in your liver for 6 months. You don't feel any psychoactive effects, but it helps you. It keeps the cravings down for opiates or whatever your drug of choice was, and so that's a good thing as far as the residual action. But just in terms of the emotional stuff and psychological stuff that psychedelics tend to bring up, depending on what you've been through, I highly recommend a good aftercare program, whether it's a therapist or joining a yoga class or whatever the case may be. I recommend doing something physical for sure. Like get into something physical. And, that involves breath work and meditation, whether it's martial arts or yoga, something like that. That can really help you a lot. And there's lots of chat rooms now and websites where people can get on and talk to each other about their experiences and what they went through. And so, I definitely recommend something like that. Now, if you want to do your own research into Ibogaine or other psychedelic therapy treatments, look at MAPS, which is the Multidisciplinary Association for Psychedelic Studies. MAPS and ICEERS, ICEERS. Those two groups are some of the leading researchers when it comes to psychedelic therapies and medicines. And MAPS especially, I'm a big fan of MAPS. So check those guys out and go down the rabbit hole for yourself about Ibogaine and other psychedelic therapies. Let's see. Probably the next podcast. I may continue on with this, psychedelic therapies and drug addiction. I think the next podcast I'm going to talk about a little bit about the history of LSD and the Swiss chemist, Dr. Albert Hofmann, that discovered LSD. One of his highest hopes for LSD was to treat alcoholism. There is no pharmaceutical to this day that is available to treat alcoholism. LSD had actually the highest success rate out of anything they've ever used. So a little AA history real quick, and then we're going to end this. So back in the 1950s, Dr. Bob and Bill Wilson, the founders of AA, they took 200 alcoholics and gave them LSD on their 12th step. 60% never went back to drinking, and the other 40% just needed periodic microdosing, to keep the demons at bay. So a little bit of AA history for you guys out there. They don't like you bringing that up at Alcoholics Anonymous meetings. They don't like that little bit of history, but it's true. You know, you can look it up for yourself, and I can attest to it. LSD really helped me a lot, especially as far as like withdrawals from alcohol. It stops it in its tracks. Like any, you know, even better than phenobarbital and whatever all the other shit they give you in rehab. Okay, anyway, I hope this podcast was helpful. If you are interested in Ibogaine treatment, I will leave an email for the podcast down in the descriptions box. You can email me, and I can give you all the information that you will need to contact the clinic that I was at, or the one that I worked for, and point you in the right direction. So, yeah, all right, everybody. Take care of yourselves. Stay healthy out there. Love each other. Love yourselves, all right? All right, everybody. Peace till the next one.